Siraj sir,
Yeah.
we are now live. You may please proceed.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thanks for making a choice to join us this evening to participate in this webinar series. Let me start with my introduction. I am Siraj Hirani, working with Mahila Housing Seva Trust as Senior Program Management Specialist, and will be moderator for this webinar. Webinar series is jointly organized by Mahila Housing Seva Trust, Dasra, and Selco Foundation as a part of Mahila Housing Seva Trust 25 years celebration. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to extend warm welcome to all the eminent panelists and participants who have joined this important conversation today on water, sanitation, and basic services. Before we proceed further, I have a few announcements to ensure smooth delivery of this webinar. The webinar is being recorded, and by participating in this webinar, you are giving your consent for the same. During presentation or a discussion, if you have any questions, please put them on Q&A box. We will answer all the questions during Q&A session towards the end of this webinar. And finally, in case if you have any technical issues during webinar, best thing to do will be to try rejoin, as we will have limited capacity to extend any technical support during webinar. I hope you understand. Now to formally open this webinar series, I will like to invite Bijal Bain, Director of Mahila Housing Seva Trust, to briefly introduce organization and also speak about the book, The City Makers, which has been published with the intention to capture learnings and success stories of the women who have not only changed their life, but the lives of the people in their neighborhood and city at large. Bijal Bain, over to you.
Thank you, Siraj Bhai. Mahila Housing Trust, as everyone may be knowing, has been working for over 25 years for poor women in the informal sector, trying to improve their habitats, their working and their environments. And the mission is to, improve, give a dignified life and improve their working places. And it has been working across India in more than 36 cities now. Let me tell you about the book that we have published as a part of our 25-year celebration. This book, The City Makers, is actually about women, poor women in the informal sector who have shaped their cities. In the cities, 40% of the population is approximately, on an average, constitute of the poor. But they are ignored by the city authorities, the planners, and the policymakers. They live in informal settlements, their settlements are uncrowded, unclean, do not have access to water and sanitation. They do not have any social security and therefore limited access to credit, and they do not have a voice also. This book, The City Makers, also tells you about stories of women who across India, with the support of Mahila Housing Trust, both individually and collectively, have changed their households, their settlements, and their cities. These poor women have also how they have participated in governance to improve the urban development and habitat related policies and make them more pro-poor, more pro-women. Thanks, Siraj Bhai.
Thank you, Bijal Bain, for this introductory remark and telling us our audience more about this book. We are all excited to grab the copy of this book and learn from MHT's work over last 2 decades. Thank you, Bijal Bain. Moving ahead with the webinar. As we all know that world is facing the worst public health and the economic crisis of the century. Government across the globe are putting their best effort to minimize the adverse impact of this crisis on health of the citizen and economy. This crisis has taught us many lessons, but has also re-emphasized the importance of having universal access to individual water, sanitation, and other essential services. Investment made by the Indian government through its flagship program like Swachh Bharat Mission probably helped us to contain the COVID infection in India. As many more people today have access to individual water sanitation services compared to few years back. But on the other side, pandemic has surfaced the harsh reality of equity in access to these basic services. We all know that frequent hand washing was suggested as a key defense against coronavirus. But still, 94 million Indians, more than 3 times the population of Australia, live without a source of clean water. And at a time when access to water and sanitation is essential to protect people from this pandemic or any other health crisis. In both urban and rural India, lack of water facilities and the need to use the community water sources and toilets has posed a challenge in fight against this pandemic, and limiting whose spread is contingent upon washing hands and maintaining social distance. It is practically impossible to prevent infection through common water and sanitation sources, especially when the common facilities in the urban slums don't have any arrangement for disinfection. And this is the ground reality in most of the cities where we have large population of people residing in slums. And hence, ensuring access to individual water facilities, water and sanitation facility, still remains an unfinished agenda. On the other side, 2/3 of the India's 718 districts are affected by extreme water scarcity as per Niti Aayog numbers which were published last year. This calls for a better water conservation strategies at local level, which government is attempting through Jal Jeevan Mission and Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Water, sanitation and other basic services, which is given for most of us attending this webinar, might take over a decade for poor to acquire. To understand this reality, let's start this discussion by watching a video that captures the voices of community leaders from a slum in Ahmedabad. May I request IT team to play the video, please?
મારું નામ હંસાબેન રસીભાઈ દંતાણી છે. હું છેલ્લા 35 વર્ષથી અહીંયા લગ્ન કરીને આવી ત્યારથી મારી જોડે પણ મકાન નહોતું, તો મેં 50 રૂપિયાના ભાવનું છાપરાની જગ્યા લઈ અને ત્યાં પણ એક મકાન બનાવ્યું. એ મકાનમાં રહેતી જઈ અને હું પણ ત્યારે બંગલાના કામ કરતી હતી. ત્યારે 60 રૂપિયા પગાર હતો. એ બંગલામાં એક ટાઈમ હું રસોઈ કરતી હતી અને વ્યાજ અને એક બંગલાનું હું પગાર લેતી નથી નાવા ધોવા માટે. એમ કરતાં કરતાં મેં બચત કરી અને મેં જગ્યા લીધી, 300 રૂપિયા જગ્યા લીધી. એ જગ્યાના મારા જોડે સિમેન્ટ રેતીના પણ પૈસા નહોતા. મેં બાયણામાં ખાડો ઘોડ્યો અને બહારથી ઈંટો સિમેન્ટ હું વેણી લાવીને અને મારા નંદોઈ હતા એમને બનાવીને અને અમે મકાન બનાવવાનું ચાલુ કર્યું. અને પાણી નહોતું મકાન બનાવવા માટે, તો મેં ડંકી હતી ત્યાં એક મજૂર રાખ્યો અને ત્યાંથી 100 રૂપિયા ભાડા લઈને અને કામકાજ અમે ચાલુ કરીને મકાન બનાવ્યું. એ મકાન બનાવ્યા પછી 3 વર્ષ થયા એટલે સાહેબ આવ્યા. સાહેબ કે તમારે બેન સહયોગ કરો. એ સહી કરાય તો અમે તો 10-15 બહેનોએ સહી કરાવી. સહી કર્યા પછી સામેવાળો એમ કહે છે કે સ્ટે મૂકો, આ તો મ્યુનિસિપાલિટીની નોટિસ આવી, સ્ટે મૂકવો પડશે. તો અમે 5 બહેનો થઈને 2,000 રૂપિયા આલ્યા. 2,000 રૂપિયા આલ્યા. મહિનો 1.5 મહિનો થયો ને એ મકાન પાડવા આવ્યા. મેં કીધું ભાઈ અમે તો સ્ટે મૂકેલો છે. તો કે સ્ટે મૂક્યો પણ ચાલે એવો નથી બેન કે. તો એમને પાડી દીધું. તો અમે ગાંઠનો સામાન બાજુમાં ખસેડીને અને મકાન પાડી દીધું. મકાન પાડ્યા પછી મને 2-3 દિવસ બહુ જ રડવું આવ્યું કે સાલું મેં આટલી મહેનત કષ્ટ કરીને મકાન બનાવ્યું તો મારું મકાન રહ્યું નહીં એમ. તો હું એવામાં 10 વર્ષ જેવી ખુલ્લામાં રહી. એમાં મારા છોકરા મોટા થયા થોડા, તો મેં એમાં મ્યુનિસિપાલિટી છોકરા મૂકી. છોકરા સવારથી ઉઠીને પાણી ભરવાનું, છોકરા મદદ કરાવવા, બહાર જવા ટોયલેટ જવું પડતું હતું, રાતના જવું પડે કાં તો સવાર વહેલા જવું પડે, પાણી જઈએ ભરવા. તો એમ કરતાં બરાબર હું છોકરા નથી ભણાવી શકતી. મારી જોડે કોઈ સગવડ નથી મકાન લેવાની કે કરવાની કે નવું બનાવવાની. તો એમાંથી 10 વર્ષમાં મેળ્યું ઢાંકીને રહેતી હતી, 2 ખાટલા આડા મૂકીને રહેતી હતી. આ બધી બહુ જ મને કષ્ટી પડતી હતી. એમાં એમએસટીની બહેનો આવી કે બેન તમને 2100 રૂપિયામાં 7 સુવિધા આવી. મેં કીધું 7 સુવિધામાં મારું તો મ્યુનિસિપાલિટી મકાન પાડી નાખ્યું, પણ બીજા બેનનું પડી જશે તો મને પણ રહેવાય નહીં દે લોકો પબ્લિક કે ના બેન એવું નહીં થાય. તો એના પછી હું એમએસટીમાં જોવા ગઈ. તો એમએસટીમાં જોયા પછી ત્યાં બધી પરિવર્તન બહેનો બધું કામ કરતી હતી, ત્યાં ટ્રેનિંગ આપતી હતી. તો મને સાચું પડ્યા પછી મેં ઘરે ટ્રેનિંગ કરી બધી બહેનોને કીધું કે આપણે 2100 રૂપિયામાં 7 સુવિધા મળે છે. તો કે તારા જેવું નહીં થાય, કહો ના મારા જેવું નહીં થાય. તો કે શું કરવાનું? મેં તો પહેલાં આપણે ખાતા ખોલાવવાના, બચત કરવાની અને 2100 રૂપિયા પૂરા કરવાના. એ 2100 રૂપિયા પૂરા કરતાં મેં ટ્રેનિંગ લીધી મેન્ટલસની બધી જાળવણીની, 7 સુવિધાની જાળવણીની. એ ટ્રેનિંગ લેતી રહી અને મીટિંગ ટ્રેનિંગ કરતી રહી. તો 7 સુવિધા પૈસા પૂરા થયા. તો તો કામકાજ ચાલુ કર્યું પછી રસ્તાના અંદર રોડના અંદર લોકોની ચોકડી કોઈના સંડાસ આ તે બધું બહુ આવતું હતું એ બધું તોડાયું કરાયું અને સાત સુવિધા મને સાત સુવિધામાં ગટર પાણી સંડાસ લાઇટના અને થાંભલા કચરાની વ્યવસ્થા પછી પાણી જવાની રોડ બાર આરસીનો અને ઉષ્યવૃપાના ઝાડ આ સાત સુવિધા અમે પણ કરી સાત સુવિધા કર્યા પછી એક મંડળ બનાવ્યું એ મંડળ મેં સરકારી રજીસ્ટર કરાવ્યું એમાં મેં મેન્ટેનન્સના પૈસા જમા કર્યું એ બધું કર્યા પછી તે મારી જોડે ટેક્સ નહોતો પણ ઘરનો ટેક્સ લાવવા મેં મહેનત કરી ટેક્સ આવવાનું પણ ચાલુ કર્યું એ બધું આવી તો ગયું પણ અમારા વર્તનમાં બહુ નવું જીવન આવી ગયું કેવું કે અમારે સવારથી ઉઠીને બહાર રાતના ટોયલેટ જવા જવું પડતું હતું અને દિવસના જવું પડતું અમે છોકરા સારા ભણાઈ નહોતા શકતા કે અમે પોતે ચોખ્ખાઈ નહોતા રહી શકતા અમે મજૂરી નહોતા કરી શકતા જ્યારે મારે કંઈ તકલીફ હતી ત્યારે હું બંગલાના કામ કરતી હતી બધી સગવડ સુવિધા બધું આવી ગયા પછી મેં મારો બગસરાનો પોતે ધંધો કર્યો કેમ કે ક્યાંક મિટિંગમાં જવાનું તો મને ટાઈમ બંગલામાં આવતા નહોતા એટલે પોતે ધંધો કરતી હું થઈ ગઈ અને ધંધો કર્યા પછી મારી તો આવક વધી અને વિસ્તારની બહેનોની આવક વધી કેમ કે સવારમાં મારો 2 કલાક બચી ગયો અને એ 2 કલાકમાં સવારમાં લોકો બહેનો રસોઈ કરે હું પણ બહાર મહેનત કરતી થઈ ગઈ મારા ઘરવાળા પણ શાકભાજીનો ધંધો કરે મારા છોકરા મેં પ્રાઇવેટમાં 7માં સુધી મ્યુનિસિપાલિટી પછી આગળ પ્રાઇવેટ સુધી મેં ભણાયા પછી અત્યારે મારા છોકરા માટે મેં 4 મકાન લીધા અને પોતાના 9 વર્ષનું આમ પરિવર્તન બહુ સારું આવ્યું મારા વિસ્તારમાં અને મારામાં બહુ જ જીવનમાં બહુ સારામાં સારું વર્તન આવ્યું બરાબર એમાંથી મને સાહેબો અને કાઉન્સિલરો અને બહેનો અને ધારાસભ્ય પણ મને વરતતા થઈ ગયા અને મને ઓળખાણ પડી ગઈ એ રીતે મારી બધી ઇજ્જત સારી વધી પહેલાં કરતાં મને બહુ જ ફેરફાર પડ્યો પહેલાં મારી કોઈ વેલ્યુ નથી.
Thank you. I think the story of Hansaben was truly touching and has helped all of us to understand how lives can be transformed just by ensuring access to the essential and basic services for these urban poor. Thus, today's topic of water, sanitation, and basic services is extremely important. And we don't only want to discuss issues, but also focus on innovative and sustainable solutions that has delivered result in this challenging environment. So for today's webinar, we have panelists from the diverse background, including practitioners, academicians, government, and donor community. Detailed profile of the speakers will be shared in the chat box when they start their presentation. With this, I will now invite our first speaker, Mr. Dhruv Bhavsar. Dhruv is working as a senior program lead at the Center for Water and Sanitation at CEPT University, Ahmedabad. He coordinates work on performance assessment system and water governance for Indian cities. Dhruv bhai, in today's presentation, I would like you to speak on performance assessment system and highlight issues of equity, if any, in service delivery, particularly focusing on urban poor. It will be great if you can also let the audience know how this performance assessment system can be used as a planning tool for delivering essential services in just and equitable manner. Over to you, Dhruv bhai.
Thank you, Siraj bhai, and very encouraging story from the team member from the Mahila Housing Trust, Parivartan, one of the initial band from the Parivartan team, and many congratulations to MST team for successfully completing 25 years, and thank you for providing opportunity to speak on this occasion. I'm representing Center for Water and Sanitation, CRDF, CEPT University, and I'll be talking about the journey of performance assessment system for monitoring water and sanitation services at scale. So just to give the background, when we have started our program in 2008-9, and the idea came from the idea about that in 2005, the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission has been launched in urban India, and there are substantial infrastructure investment has been made, especially in water and sanitation sector. But the major focus of the urban projects was more about the infrastructure creation, like building a water treatment plant, laying down the sewerage network, but very little known about the impact on the improvement in service delivery, how much water actually received at the end users, what is the quality of the water supply, what is the duration of the water supply. So all this information is very little known about at the decision maker level. So, and also when we have started, this data is available, but data is available in a very fragmented manner. It is available in a paper-based manner where you cannot even analyze properly and make an informed decision. So this is the phrase, which is famous phrase, which you can't improve what you can't measure. So that is the very truly applicable in urban India at that time. And so this is the condition, and the performance assessment system framework is try to moving from this vicious cycle to the moving to the virtuous cycle by replacing the introducing the performance measurement framework, which actually measures the service delivery of the water supply and sanitation. Performance monitoring, which is not in a one-time exercise and not in a exercise for a piecemeal manner where we selected a pilot basis 12 to 30 cities. And earlier that was the experience has been made into the performance monitoring related experience in India. So we wanted to consider at a scale, and we have started with 2 states, Gujarat and Maharashtra, and considering all the cities. So that is the continuing performance monitoring. So we can get the historic trend, etc. for the service delivery, which also enables state, national, and the local government to influence the policy and financing related decisions. And basically that leads to the performance improvement plan, which Siraj bhai has talked about, how this entire information base will be used for actual decision making and planning of the for improving service delivery. So that is the 3 major component of the program when we have started. So and also when we have thought of this performance measurement framework, we realized we reviewed the international practices, benchmarking practices, also IWF, which is very famous for benchmarking related activities, we have reviewed. But we have also realized at the same time that the whatever the system we are creating, that should be the local suited for the local context, and also it should be the recipient government should adopt those systems. Then and then this will be useful and able to implement at a scale. And we don't want to become a more like an academic exercise and more research exercise. We wanted to also explore how this exercise can be internalized and mainstream into the government day-to-day governance and decision-making related exercise. Fortunately, during that the same time in 2008-9, government of India has also come up with the service level benchmark, and the entire framework of PAS has been aligned with the government of India's service level benchmark in 2008-9. But the focus, we have also more focus on the service delivery in equity aspect. In slums, what is the service delivery? Those are the missing piece into the government of India service level benchmark. So that we have added. So basically performance assessment system is having a 5 major themes: access and coverage, equity in service delivery, service level and quality, efficiency in service operation, and financial sustainability. These are the 5 key themes, and it focuses on to the water supply, sanitation, solid waste management, and stormwater drainage. So there are 32 key indicators has been there, and more than 100 local action indicators has been designed into this system. And as we have told that when we have started, this is our journey of moving from paper-based measurement system to the online system, where we have developed an online web-based tool platform where the urban local government is providing the information about their service level into the respected sectors. And this has been prepared with inbuilt validation checks in partnership with the Tata Consulting Services. Also, obviously, when we have started this exercise at a massive scale in Gujarat and Maharashtra, initially there are 400 towns we have started with, and in the year 1 there is a lots of capacity building has to be taken, and we have seen that the information has been putting in a very fragmented manner that needs to be collated in a systematic manner, and the proper training has to be done. So you can see the over the period of time, in the 5 years, in the first year, we have started visiting the city by cities and collecting information, building the capacity. And we took the first round of data collection exercise took almost 1.25 years. And over the period of time, you can see that the time has been reduced to 6 years in the second year, and the 1 quarter in third year, and by fifth year, it has been a self-assessment tool has been used by the respected urban local government, and the time is taking only 1 month. And this system is also internalized by the system. So what is the benefit is the systems, online systems, like it enables all national government, local state government and local government to assess their performance levels, take them review assessment, and also whatever the investment has been made, it has been, whether it has been translated into the improving the service delivery or not. So that track can be made easily. And these are the some of the snapshot where this various state and the city profile has been generated out of this portal. Looking at this system, we have started with the 2 cities and 2 states, and now we are working in 5 states since last 5 years. And if we see the key inferences and key results, we can say that the cities are moving towards the equitable service delivery across state and cities. And the 5 state results indicates that the Gujarat, Telangana, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand has a very less disparity across the city level services versus slum level services, whereas the Maharashtra has reported the highest inequality distribution of water supply in slums versus city level. And also, if we see that out of these 850 cities, only 100 or about 180 cities do not have a reported slums in their cities. And if we see the increasing water supply coverage over the period of time from 2016 to 19, we can see the extent of increasing the coverage in slum is very high as compared to the city level coverage. So that is a positive impact what we've seen over the period of time. And if we see the post 2014, the Swachh Bharat mission has been launched. We can see that the slum level service delivery in slum levels, if we categorize into the metros, large cities and small and medium town cities, in all cities, coverage of individual toilets in slum, access to wastewater network services in slums, and also the SWM services, door-to-door services has been remarkably increased. You can see, except still despite the fact that the Swachh Bharat mission is the largest toilet building exercise, metro cities are still laggard in terms of the coverage of individual toilets in slums. They are still depending on the community toilets, and we have been supporting closely with government of Maharashtra and supporting the Swachh Maharashtra implementation of the Swachh Maharashtra mission. And we also undertake assessment into the state level assessment, which clearly indicates that the lack of funds is the one of the major constraint in order to moving towards universalized access to individual toilets in the states. And almost in all categories where the people have applied for SBM, but the toilet has been constructed, or people have applied for SBM but not started construction, or the third category where the people have not applied for the SBM, the key reasons has been found as the limited access to the credit-related financial constraint, and also the space-related constraint has been found. And we have been saying that there is the SBM 1 has been about to end, and the entire urban India has been declared ODF. But we firmly believe that still in order to reduce the inequalities between the cities and slums, SBM 2 must have to focus on the moving towards universal access to individual toilet. And these are some of the experience from the Maharashtra, where we have successfully demonstrated sanitation credit related ideas through Mavim in Jalna, also with Sevagri Rin as aggregated support from the Housing Finance Institution, where the credit has been given to build the toilets, to promote the building toilets. Also, the idea about the group toilet, because in the metro cities, the space constraint is also perceived as the one of the major issue. So the group toilet related ideas, adaptive reuse of small dwelling space. This is the example from the Pune, where if the enabling environment has been given, like an extension of the sewerage network has been extended into the slums, actually the slum dwellers are ready to build the toilet in their houses, even if the dwelling units are 10 square meters or 15 square meters. Then and then they are also ready to, and these are the real-time examples of the people who have built the toilet. So these are still there is a scope for improving in this space. And only as we have discussed earlier, in the COVID era also the hand washing facility, ensuring the reliable service delivery is also important. So even if the ensure individual toilet at home, ensure adequate water supply at the consumer end, and the adequate duration in the days of the supply is also very critical. But what we have found across the five states experience, that when the slums are connected with the city network, the service levels disparity cannot be found across cities and state. The service delivery are more or less same what the cities are enjoying. The slums are also enjoying the same service levels. But we have found that the service level disparity found across the city size and the across the states. You can see that the around 300 cities are receiving less than 70 LPCDs. So which is again a grave concern, where we need to focus about the water security and ensuring the reliable water supply, especially in small and medium town cities. And in terms of the duration also, the average water supply duration is around 2 hours only. And there are 100 cities where the water supply is receiving once in a week, where the urban poor are will be the most vulnerable, because the non-poor, non-slum area, they have an adequate space for the storage for a longer period of time, where the in slums, the storage space is also not available. So these are the vulnerable points where the further focus is to be required. So these are the key highlights of the results based on the 5 states experience. And these are the all the results what we have I have presented. This will be available in a public domain in the website www.pass.org.in, where you can see the various city profile, compare your state city profile, and interactive dashboards. Everything you can access from the state. So this is the beauty of this tool, that this can be used for various decision making and the governance decision making related ideas. And it has been this tool has been used for a wide range of users, ranging from government agency to researcher, consultant, financial institution, and regulators. Just give you the few example, like when we have presented the yearly information, annual information to the government of Gujarat, and they've realized they have a massive urban infrastructure program where all cities are implementing water supply network and the underground sewerage network. And when they've saw the result, they've realized that the actually infrastructure has been laid, but the connection is not been realized on ground. So there are lots of decision, state level decision has been made, that the connection cost has been waived off, connection cost has been included as a part of the DPR cost. So it ensured that the water supply and drainage connection is also been ensured at the ground level. Also, when ADB and the World Bank has been preparing their mission document for a water supply and sanitation infrastructure, they've been using this information as a starting point, as a baseline. Also, we found that the CAG and the state technical boards are also using this information widely, and of course, academic institutions and researchers are also using for various activities. And just to summarize, we have achieved at a scale, as I mentioned earlier, such exercise has been focused on for a piecemeal manner, capturing 30 to 40 cities. So we have thought that it should not be a pilot, it should be operated at a scale to make an impact. Also, we have been working with all level of the government, then and then it is possible to scale and sustain for a longer period of time. So that is the key lessons what we have learned. So we past started with 350 plus cities in 2 states, and now we have reached to the 1,000 cities, working in 5 states and 100 smart cities. And uh, and it is the journey is not and journey is continuing. Hopefully, it will be also rolling out pan India across 4,000 plus cities under the proposed Jal Jeevan mission. But the discussion is still ongoing. And not at the least, I would like to also thank to our funder, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because they are quite generous to explore this idea. And this is the first grant what we have received for water and sanitation other than the US and the Europe. So this is the journey of our past from last 10 years. We have last year only celebrated 10 years of the PAS system, and the journey is still continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Dhrubai, for sharing this very exciting and useful tool performance assessment system. Dhrubai, your sharing of learnings and based on the experience of working with the state and city administration is really very insightful. I hope our audience has benefited from the performance assessment system presentation. It was good to see that cities are moving towards equitable water services. You also highlighted the need to focus on the small and medium-sized cities, because that's where we see the differences, that there are few cities which are receiving the more allocation of the resources for delivering the services. So I think that's where issue of the equity lies. Thank you once again for a very insightful presentation. Now it's time to move to our next presentation from Antara Trivedi. Antara works as a project coordinator at Mahila Housing Trust, and she will be sharing her learning and experience of making city of Amalner open defecation free, and also some bottom-up approaches to address the water scarcity issues that towns like Amalner are facing. Over to you, Antara.
Yes, Rajbhai. Yes, am I audible?
Yes, Antara.
Okay. So hello everyone, I'm Antara from Mahila Housing Trust, and today I'll be presenting MST's experience of working in small towns for water and sanitation, and specifically the strategies for making the city open defecation free, especially in the view of climate change. So, so we have taken a case study of Amalner city where we are executing a project. Amalner is a city in Jalgaon district in Maharashtra state with approximate population of 95,000 and average household size of 4 persons. So government of Maharashtra invited MST for implementing a project in Amalner to make it open defecation free and to sustain the status. So first step for making any city open defecation free is providing individual toilets. So we initiated a project work by collecting the data on field, where we found that out of 2743 households, 1583 households lack individual toilets, which meant that around 58% of people were either defecating in open or were using community toilets. But as per our experience, community toilets is not a sustainable solution. So these are the 11 slums where we are working in Amalner. So we made various strategies for dealing and stopping open defecation. First is definitely mobilizing people for construction of toilets. But as I said, just giving toilets is not a proper solution for stopping OD, but behavior change plays a vital role. Changing habits of people, especially elderly and children, is most difficult. And therefore, we have to work extensively on behavior change. And today's whole presentation will especially focus on the behavior change strategies adopted. Also, the other strategy which we formed was mobilizing people to use community toilets. But I reiterate that use of community toilets is not a sustainable strategy for slums because its maintenance is very challenging. To motivate people to construct individual toilets, we need to know their constraints. What are their exact problems? So we divided our beneficiaries into 3 categories, and then we formed strategies to tackle them. So first, our category was families who are facing financial crisis. We help them with the benefit of government subsidy and by providing microfinance for sanitation. For people having space constraint, we opted for shared toilets. An MOU is signed by all the families in which the roles and responsibilities for sharing the arrangements are clearly mentioned. And the third category was families staying on rent. Working with these people is very tough because all the owners, I mean, not all, but almost the owners of the houses, they stay out of the city. And so we are continuously trying to contact them and mobilize them and convince them to make an individual toilet for the tenants. But still, it is very challenging for us. These are the photographs of the team mobilizing the community in slums. And this is the photograph of an agreement signed by the families in case of shared toilets. So as I said earlier, that providing individual toilet does not solve the problem, but we have to go through various mindsets even after toilet construction. So while executing, we have to deal with many mindsets of the people. Like old people, they always argued that they don't feel comfortable and feel suffocated in using toilets. So they keep on their practice of open defecating. Many people also shared that they fear that their soak pits will get flooded soon, and therefore they avoided using toilets. Open defecation of children is considered as very normal in slums, so they continue with their practice. So we made various strategies for behavior change of the people along with abolition of OD spots. First was beautification of OD spots after providing the beneficiaries individual toilets. We formed watchdog committees to monitor OD spots. They wake up early at 4 o'clock in the morning and they visit the OD spots and communicate with the beneficiaries and convince them to stop OD. Flowers were given to them and information regarding ill effects on health due to open defecation was given by using icy materials. Cameras were set on the OD spots. Though having toilets at home, many people, especially elders, prefer open defecation, and so their toilets were locked by the committees so that the other family members are also not able to use it. As a result, the family members and the committee members, they convinced the elders to make use of the toilet. This is a photograph of an OD spot in Gandlipura slum. It was beautified after providing individual toilet to the people who used to open defecate here. And this fencing is done and plantation is done in coordination with the community and the councillor. And the watchdog committees make sure that it is not again changed into an OD spot. So these are the photographs of watchdog committees and how they convince the people on field. Committees monitor OD spots and communicate with the beneficiaries. They capture the reasons of open defecation at individual level and form a strategy accordingly to tackle them, and then they develop a report card which is shown over here. So while executing a project, the valid reason shared by the beneficiaries for not constructing an individual toilet was the water scarcity problem, because Amalner is a water scarce area. And so that is how working on water scarcity became our priority. Community used to get water once in 5 to 7 days during normal seasons, and the situation gets worse in summers when they get water once in 12 to 15 days. People who don't have individual connection have to walk at least 1 kilometer to fill the water. They have to store water in big drums and vessels and have to spend around rupees 100 to 200 per month behind it. So if we see the situation of water in India, 70% of India's water supply is groundwater supply. And as per Jal Shakti mission, 21 cities in India is going to match ground zero in terms of water access. So more concentration is on metros and rural areas, while small towns, they lack financial capacity and technical expertise to tackle this situation. And with this climate change, the situation is going to get worse in small cities. The major reasons for water scarcity in Amalner are Tapi River, which is around 22 kilometers away from Amalner, and water is pumped from there, and that Tapi River is drying up. Bori River, which is a local river in Amalner, is emptied now and is used as open defecation spot. Water losses and dilapidated pipelines and the pumping cost of rupees 22 lakhs per month, which is quite a big amount for Nagar Palika. Moreover, there is no strategy or provision made for proper reuse and recharge of water in Amalner. Traditional wells, which are the most reliable source of water in small towns, are defunct. We have already mapped 17 such wells which are not functional right now. So MST plays a vital role in bridging the gaps of funds and the technical expertise needed. We have prepared a detailed project report focusing on the technological solutions to address the water scarcity in Amalner. The DPR focuses mainly 3 models based on retention, recharge, and reuse of water. The main activities proposed in DPR are reviving and recharge of traditional wells, 17 wells, through roof rainwater harvesting technique, which will ultimately increase the water level by 4 to 5 feet. Construction of check dams at Bori River, revival of water source at Tapi River, installation of 2 sewage treatment plants at Tadenala and Bori River in Amalner, and to reduce the pumping cost, installation of solar power plant at pumping stations. So we have already initiated our efforts towards implementing the DPR, and right now in collaboration with Miseria Foundation, we are executing a project for reviving and recharging the traditional wells which are defunct right now. The photographs over here are of 2 wells which are revived through roof rainwater harvesting technique in Amalner, and the above photo is of Tadepura well, which was totally defunct, and right now there is around 31 feet of water in that. And during this COVID, all over people in Tadepura slum, they were extremely benefited by using this water. Further, MST will be building the capacity of Kuva women on climate change resilience and specifically related to sanitation water. And we are also supporting Nagar Palika right now to raise resources from state government for other aspects, that is STPs and solar power plant installation in the DPR. So we are also supporting Nagar Palika for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Antara, for this wonderful presentation rooted in the field reality. Your presentation brought forward some key issues that needs to be addressed to ensure the last mile connectivity for basic services like water and sanitation. And the point of reviving the traditional water sources, particularly in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, I think is extremely important, and that's what requires an attention from the local administration and other partner agencies. It was very insightful to learn about some bottom-up solutions you have implemented. And it will be interesting to see how such solutions can be replicated in other areas facing similar problems. So thanks once again, Antara, for a wonderful presentation. We will now watch our second video that captures the story of women from Amalner. May I request IIT team to play the video, please?
नमस्कार, मेरा नाम पल्लवी विकास सुतार है। मैं अमलनेर के ताड़ेपुरा में रहती हूँ। मेरा मायका गुजरात का है और मैं एक गृहिणी हूँ। मैं अमलनेर में 6 साल से रह रही हूँ। मैं 12वीं तक पढ़ी हूँ और मेरा शिक्षण गुजरात की आनंद जगह में हुआ है। मैं शादी करके अमलनेर में आई। जब मैं ससुराल में आई तब पता चला कि वहाँ पर शौचालय नहीं है। मेरे मायके में शौचालय था। शौचालय के बिना कैसे रहना मुझे समझ नहीं आ रहा था। जगह नहीं थी, कहाँ जाना मदद के लिए पता नहीं था, और उस पर शौच के लिए बाहर जाने को बोला गया था। तो मुझे एकदम से झटका लगा कि मैं यहाँ पे नहीं हूँ, मैं यहाँ की बहू हो तो कैसे मैं जाऊँ। मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था, शर्म सी आती थी। जब मैंने आसपास पूछा तब पता चला कि ताड़ेपुरा में कई घरों में शौचालय नहीं था। आसपास की महिलाओं ने बताया कि सर पर पल्लू लेकर बाहर शौच के लिए जाना पड़ता है, सुबह जल्दी उठकर जाना पड़ता है, देर रात को जाने से डर लगता है। मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था। और फिर पूरा दिन सोच रोक कर रखना पड़ता था, जिसकी वजह से मेरे पेट में दर्द होता था। मेरे घर वालों को वह काफ़ी बोला कि समझाने की कोशिश की कि वो घर में शौचालय बनवा दे, पर किसी ने मेरी बात नहीं सुनी। वे कहते रहे कि पैसे की कमी है, नगर पालिका कभी गए नहीं थे तो कैसे पता चलेगा। तो पता ही नहीं चल रहा था कि क्या करें। मेरे लिए शौचालय न होने की चिंता तब और ज़्यादा बढ़ गई थी जब मैं गर्भवती थी। मैं उस अवस्था में मुझे बहुत दिक्कतें आने लगी थी, कभी भी शौच के लिए बाहर जाना पड़ता था। बारिश के मौसम में कीचड़ की वजह से पाँव फिसलने का डर रहता था। इस वजह से मैंने खाना भी कम कर दिया था ताकि मुझे शौच के लिए बाहर ना जाना पड़े, जिसका असर मेरे घर पर पड़ने लगा। मुझे लगा था कि मैं डिलीवरी के लिए मेरे मायके चली जाऊँ तो अच्छा रहता, लेकिन ससुराल वाले लोग समझ ही नहीं सकते थे मेरे को। तभी मेरा संपर्क एमएसटी की महिलाओं से हुआ। उन्होंने मुझे शौचालय के महत्व के बारे में बताया, हमें तालीम दी और सारी मूलभूत सुविधाओं के बारे में बताया। पोस्टर्स और वीडियो बता के शौचालय के बारे में और सरकार से मिलने वाली सब्सिडी के बारे में पूरी जानकारी दी। उन्होंने मुझे घर में शौचालय बनाने के लिए प्रोत्साहित किया। जानकारी मिलने पर मुझ में हिम्मत आई और मैंने उन्हें अपनी दिक्कतें बताई और मैंने घर वालों को समझाने को कहा। फिर हमने मिलकर घर वालों को शौचालय बनवाने के लिए मना लिया। अब शौचालय बनाने के बाद समय में मेरे सामने दूसरी मुश्किल खड़ी हुई, वो थी पानी की असुविधा। अमरनेर में 5 से 8 दिन में एक बार पानी आता है, तो अब मुद्दा ये था कि शौचालय बना तो दे, लेकिन उसकी साफ सफाई के लिए पानी तो चाहिए, उसे इस्तेमाल करने के लिए भी पानी चाहिए। एमएसटी की तालीम लेने के बाद हमने 12 महिलाओं का सीएजी ग्रुप बनाया। तब एमएसटी ने बताया कि ताड़ेपुरा में एक कुआं है जो सालों से बंद है, अगर उसे वापस जिंदा कर दे तो पानी की दिक्कत दूर हो सकती है। हमने एमएसटी के साथ मिलकर मीटिंग करके और सब लोगों की सहमति ली और कुएं को वापस जिंदा करने की बात की। उन्होंने मीटिंग में रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग की टेक्निक के बारे में बताया और बताया कि कैसे आसपास के घरों के छतों से पानी कुएं में डालेंगे। हमने काम शुरू करवाया और ध्यान रखा कि काम अच्छे से हो रहा है। कुआं पूरा होने पर उसमें काफ़ी सारा पानी आया। उसके बाद मैंने मेरे घर में आखिर में शौचालय बना दिया। शौचालय बनने पर जैसे सारी सभी समस्याएं हल हो गई। अब न शौच रोकने की ज़रूरत है और ना ही रात को जाने की चिंता। कुएं के पानी के से सिर्फ मेरे घर में पानी ही की समस्या ही नहीं, पर ताड़ेपुरा की पानी की मुश्किलें कम हो गई और ताड़ेपुरा में बहुत लोगों ने अपने शौचालय का काम किया। यह कुआं हमें कोरोना के लॉकडाउन के समय भी बहुत काम आया। जब लॉकडाउन था और हम पानी लेने जा रहे नहीं पाते थे, तब हम इसी कुएं से पानी लेते थे। हम कुएं के पानी की साफ सफाई का पूरा ध्यान रखते हैं और देखते हैं कि इसमें कोई कचरा तो नहीं डाल रहा है। हम नियमित रूप से कुएं में जल स्तर को मापते हैं। सच में जब से एमएसटी की महिलाएं हमारे एरिया में काम करने आई हैं और हमें तालीम और जानकारी दी, तब से काफी सारी महिलाओं बस्ती के काम के लिए आगे आने लगी है। पहली बार नगर पालिका गए और मुख्याधिकारी से बात की, एमएसटी में प्रोत्साहित किया और हमारा आत्मविश्वास बढ़ाया।
Thank you. Once again, a wonderful feedback from a community leader. And I think the voices of this community leader once again emphasize the struggle that one individual or a family has to undergo when services are not accessible. And also it emphasizes the importance of having a localized solution. And that's what is going to work actually during the crisis time, which was proven in the pandemic time. So thanks once again, IT team, for playing this video. Now, after listening to the experience of practitioners from NGOs and community leaders, now it's time to hear someone from the government system. It's our privilege to have with us Mr. Rajesh Meena, Superintending Engineer with Jaipur Nagar Nigam. He brings in the rich experience of 25 years of working with Nagar Nigam, particularly with Swachh Bharat Mission since 2014. In his presentation, Rajesh will talk about impact of government flagship programs like Swachh Bharat Mission and Jal Jeevan Mission and Jal Shakti Abhiyan, and how it has helped to address the issues of water sanitation, particularly for the poor community. I will now hand over the floor to Rajesh ji. Before Rajesh ji start, I will also request all the participants to post their question in Q&A box. We can see that questions are posted on the chat box. If you are posting it on a Q&A box, it will be easy for us to track it and then take it up during end of this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Rajesh ji.
Thank you, Siraj ji. Good evening to all respected and congratulations to MSD on the occasion of Silver Jubilee. Water is the most valuable substance of our life. Hence, we can say no water, no life. Now we are sharing my presentation with you. Nowadays, we have heard Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Jal Jeevan Mission, Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, Jal Shakti Ministry. What are these? Now we are discussing about these government programs which are centrally funded. Water is the source of happiness, energy, health, and piety, and is life-giving as mother. This is the quotation which are taken from our ऋग्वेद, जिसका अर्थ है जल आनंद का स्रोत है, ऊर्जा का भंडार है, कल्याणकारी, पवित्र करने वाला और माँ की तरह पोषक तथा जीवनदाता है. Now you can understand the how is important water in our life. What is the need of इन मिशनों की आवश्यकता क्यों हुई, क्यों ये मिशन चर्चा में आए, मिशन क्या है, मिनिस्ट्री कौन सी है जो इसको रिलेटेड है, इसके उद्देश्य ऑब्जेक्टिव्स क्या हैं, इंपॉर्टेंस, बेनिफिट्स क्या हैं, गवर्नमेंट स्ट्रेटेजी क्या है इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की. वाटर क्राइसिस it's not a problem today, it's a problem from previous days. In 2019, a report submitted by Niti Aayog, according to that, by 2020, 21 cities will run out groundwater, including Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai. By 2030, 40% population will have no access to drinking water. India water demand likely to be double by 2030. Due to water scarcity may account for 6% loss in Indian GDP by year 2015. इसके अर्थ में यह है कि यदि पानी की कमी इसी प्रकार चलती रही तो हमारी जीडीपी पर भी इसका नुकसान हो सकता है. Same a report submitted by Niti Aayog in 2018. According to that, it has been mentioned India is suffering from the worst water crisis in its history. 70% of the country water was contaminated. 2 lakh people die every year because of inadequate access to safe water. About 600 million people in the country face high to extreme water stresses at present. Our main source of water availability decreased up to 21%. Our groundwater level decreased 54%. A report submitted by World Resource Institute in 2018, according to that, due to water scarcity, about 40% of thermal power station is going to be shut down in the world. It's a huge problem of our India water crisis. Due to this, a Jal Shakti Abhiyan launched by our cabinet minister, Jal Shakti Minister, Shri Gajendra Singh Shekhawat on 1st July 2019. The aim was water conservation and water security is water stress districts and blocks. जिन जिलों में पानी की समस्या अत्यधिक है उनके लिए एक प्रोग्राम चलाया गया. According to Jal Shakti Abhiyan, there is a 256 districts and 1,593 blocks are identified with their worst water crisis. Jal Shakti Abhiyan taken as a Jan Andolan इसके तहत कोई अलग से बजट प्रावधान नहीं किया गया था। इसमें जो पब्लिक बिहेवियर है उसमें चेंज लाया जाए और पुरानी ट्रेडिशनल कल्चर को फॉलो किया जाए। पानी को जो वेस्ट करने की प्रवृत्ति है उसको रोका जाए और पानी की बचत की जाए और पानी का जो यूज है वो मिनिमम किया जाए। इस अभियान का एम्बेसडर आमिर खान को बनाया गया था। जल शक्ति अभियान 2 चरणों में चलाया गया। फर्स्ट फेज जो चलाया गया वो 1 जुलाई 2019 टू 15 सितंबर 2019 साउथ वेस्ट मानसून सीजन के लिए चलाया गया। इंडिया में मैक्सिमम जो बारिश होती है वो साउथ वेस्ट मानसून के तहत होती है। और सेकेंड फेज जो चलाया गया 1 अक्टूबर 2019 टू 30 नवंबर 2019 नॉर्थ ईस्टर्न रोटेटिंग मानसून के लिए चलाया गया, जिसमें हमारे तमिलनाडु जैसे स्टेट्स में बरसात होती है। और इस अभियान के तहत उन जो 256 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स थे उनके 1593 ब्लॉक्स थे, उसमें 94 ब्लॉक्स ऐसे थे जहां पर अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ ग्राउंड वाटर वेरी लो था। 313 ब्लॉक्स ऐसे थे जहां पर ग्राउंड वाटर बेहद क्रिटिकल पोजीशन में था और 1186 ब्लॉक्स ऐसे थे जहां पर कि पानी लगभग समाप्त हो चुका था। The objective of Jal Shakti Abhiyan: water conservation and rainwater harvesting, renovation of traditional and other water bodies, reuse of water and recharge of structures, watershed development, intensive afforestation, घने वन लगाना। जल जीवन मिशन चर्चा में रहने के 2 मुख्य कारण थे। फर्स्ट, Assam has decided to involve the youth who are coming back from other state in the state in the implementation of Jal Jeevan Mission. आसाम एक ऐसा स्टेट था जिसने अन्य राज्यों से आने वाले युवाओं को जल जीवन मिशन की क्रियान्वयन में शामिल करने का फैसला किया गया। Then second important reason, in the financial year 2020-21 first quarter, April 2020 to June 2020, tap water connection have been provided to 19 lakh families in rural areas across the country despite COVID-19 epidemic, lockdown and other restrictions. Financial year 2020-21 फर्स्ट क्वार्टर 19 लाख रूरल फैमिलीज को नल कनेक्शन दिए गए, जबकि इस दौरान कोविड-19 महामारी जैसे प्रतिबंध भी थे। सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट allocated 1832 crore to Bihar and 1407 crore to Assam under the Jal Jeevan Mission. Jal Jeevan Mission prevention of rainwater, seawater, micro irrigation, water conservation camping, general citizens should be alert. Children are being taught the importance of water. What is the mission? Jal Jeevan Mission was announced by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi on the 15 August 2019 on the occasion of 73rd Independence Day. The goal of this mission is to provide good quality drinking water to all households in the country by 2024. Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, HGNSJ. Prime Minister also urged the people to come forward and contribute in conserving water resources and harvest rainwater. To achieve this goal, government has decided rupees 3.6 lakh crore was announced by the Government of India. Under this mission, the goal is deliver water through pipe in every house. Central and state government will work together for the mission of water life. Related ministry, the government has created a new ministry called Jal Shakti Ministry after merging Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation along with drinking water and sanitation. Objective of Jal Jeevan Mission: Jal Jeevan Mission, and according to Jal Jeevan Mission, a supply of 55 liters of water per person per day in each rural household by 2024 through a functional household tap connection FHTC. It is designed especially for rural women and girls who had to otherwise walk for miles to fetch water for their households. A status of tapped water found that out of 19.06 crore rural households in the country, 3.24 crore, near about 16.98% household had tap connection, and 15.81 crore, near about 83.02% household have to be provided functional household tap connection. To management of water resources and water supply in integrated and holistic manner, to create local infrastructure for rainwater collection, harvesting, groundwater recharge, withdrawal, and management of household wastewater for reuse in agriculture. Many water conservation works will be done, such as point recharge, silt removal from small irrigation reservoirs, farming wastewater, and making water source sustainable. To achieve the goal of sustainable water supply, the center and state scheme will be included in Jal Jeevan Mission. Importance of Jal Jeevan Mission: in India has 18% of the world population, but the source of soft water is only 4%. The groundwater level is decreasing. Water is being exploited excessively. Water quality is deteriorating. Climate change is being observed. Due to all these reasons, the availability of drinking water remains a problem. Today, there is a need to conserve water immediately in the country, especially because the level of groundwater is falling. Therefore, the main focus in Jal Jeevan Mission will be on integrated management of water demand and supply at a sustainable level. Benefits: water supply from house to house by tap. Mission is based on community approach to water and included extensive information, education, and communication as key component of mission to create a Jan Andolan for water, thereby making it everyone priority. Availability of clean and potable water, bringing groundwater level up, reduction in diseases caused by water, reduction in waste of water. The funding pattern between central and the state: 90:10 for Himalayan and northeastern state, 50-50 for other state, and 100% for territory. Rashtriya Jal Jeevan Course. The people who would like to contribute and donate voluntarily for water supply in rural area, to facilitate this, Rashtriya Jal Jeevan Course will mobilize and accept donation of the contribution received from various sources to fund Jal Jeevan Mission. Institutional mechanism. For its implementation, National Jal Jeevan Mission NJJM at central level, State Water and Sanitation Mission SWSM at state level, District Water and Sanitation Mission DWSM at the district level, Village Water Sanitation Committee VWSC / Pani Samiti at village level. Each village will prepare a village action plan VAP, which will have these components: water resources and its maintenance, water supplies, grey water management, mission progress as on 25th December 2020, total number of household 19.06 crore, number of household provided tap connection 6.61%, which are 32.30%. Number of remaining household where tap connection to be provided, 12.9 crores, which are 67.68 crore. High coverage states are Goa 100%, Telangana 98.48%, Pondicherry 87.31%, Haryana 81.75%, Gujarat 80.88%. Now we are talking about ODF status. What are ODF, ODF plus, ODF plus plus? According Swachh Bharat Mission Overview, Rajasthan. Mission object, elimination of open defecation, eradication of manual scavenging, modern and scientific municipal solid waste management, IEC and public awareness. Open ODF, at any point of the day, not a single person is found defecating in the open. In our country, there are 4372 cities are declared as ODF, and out of 4372, 4340 are verified. Now ODF plus. ODF, at any point of the day, not a single person is found defecating or urinating in the open, and all community and public toilets are functional and well maintained. In our country, there are 1,632 cities are declared as ODF plus. ODF plus plus, at any point of the day, not a single person is found defecating or urinating in open. All community and public toilets are functional and well maintained, and fecal sludge and sewage is safely managed and treated, with no discharge or dumping of untreated fecal sludge and sewage in drains, water bodies, or open areas. In our country, 489 cities are declared as ODF plus plus. In Rajasthan, we have constructed 3.35 lakh individual household toilets and 2,665 community toilets, and 80 community toilets are under construction program, which are the more than 100% target. Solid waste management, door-to-door collection. In Rajasthan, we have coverage 99.27% of the municipal area. Solid waste management, we are processing near about 58% of solid waste. We have information, education and communication. We have done information, education and communication by hoarding, unipole, pole kiosk, pole boarding are placed at different locations. Similarly, RSRTC buses side back panels are also being used. FM radio jingles are being played. Prabhat Peri Nukkad Natak school competition are being carried out by ULV at their level. Jaipur has received first prize in fastest moving capital category in 2018 Swachh Sarvekshan, and also Kota has received first prize in citizen feedback category. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh ji, for very insightful presentation, and particularly sharing the details about how government is planning to address the water scarcity issue, which is a burning issue for the country. Thanks once again. Now it's time for me to invite our final panelist, Mr. Arvindan Srinivasan. Arvindan works with Dasra as an associate director and leads the urban sanitation vertical, focused on building national collaborative to accelerate safe sanitation solutions for India's vulnerable community. Dasra, being the largest strategic philanthropy organization, is very well positioned to work very closely with implementing partners, governments, and funding agencies. And so today we have invited Mr. Srinivasan to throw some light on funding landscape of water and sanitation sector with particular focus on urban poor. Over to you, Arvindan.
Thank you, Siraz, and congratulations to the MST team for your Silver Jubilee. And of course, I think the topic that you're talking about today, in terms of especially communities and women taking ownership and actually transforming and being part of the solution is super important. I think if there is one thing that we've learned in the last 9 months, it is how do we bring communities along in whatever we try to do to better the lives of our citizens, whether it is urban or rural. I don't have a presentation, but instead I will divide what I have to say into 2 parts. One is more broadly in terms of the post-COVID philanthropic landscape in India. And secondly, very specific to sanitation, what did we see as some of the things that, in the landscape of urban sanitation specifically, what we are hearing and what we are seeing in terms of trends. So I think, and some of this is also complicated because it wasn't just COVID and it wasn't just FCRA. It has been so many things where the sector has been impacted in a very, very deep manner. And when I say that, it's not just for the ease with which this ecosystem can collaborate. FCRA has been a challenge because of which a lot of small organizations especially have suffered. But also it creates a tough trust deficit in the sector, right? In between, people who are coming from different ends of the spectrum. However, what was heartening to see is that overall, at least as per, the Candid website, which actually tracks a lot of fund flows to India, $500 million, around 500 million in philanthropic capital has been mobilized in India during COVID relief. And it's for India, not just within India, but from abroad as well as from within India. The second thing is that, and a lot of this comes from a lot of data that we have aggregated over a period of 9 months. So we have spoken to at least 40 different funders in the general landscape and about 20 different funders in the sanitation landscape. So please, treat this as a spectrum, and it's not specific to any one particular individual or a funder or an NGO. The second thing, which most of you might have already heard, is in terms of the CSR funding, right? Most of that funding that was mobilized, and typically in each year, about anywhere between 10,000 to 15,000 crores get mobilized, and a lot of that went into COVID relief this year. And so a lot of organizations which might have been working on different aspects who depend on this kind of funding, unless they are already aligned to the kind of things that COVID has actually put in front, they found it very, very hard because a lot of the capital has been sucked away from the system. Now, however, I think there are a lot of other corporates who have actually increased their funding. These are a few, but these are stalwarts who have actually increased their fundings and focused specifically on areas where their business operations exist, but also on areas which are strategically aligned and a long-term bet for them. And I'll come to that a little bit when I speak about sanitation in particular, right? The third thing is that while, and we have seen this in the past as well, a couple of times in the last 2 decades when there have been big financial crises, market crashes, etc. When the international community, their giving actually gets reduced, the Indian community steps up, and we saw this happening with the Tatas, the Nilekini stepping up when there was challenges when one of the international foundations in India could not channel money. These foundations, Indian foundations, actually stepped in to provide backup to some of the organizations, especially smaller organizations that depend on this. We are seeing some of those trends again, and we are seeing a lot more interest from high net worth individual families who actually run a lot of these family businesses, who are actually doubling down to provide more funding to the sector. Of course, this does come at a very, very selective flow of funds, right? Because people fund those whom they already know and they are trying to deepen relationships. So it is very hard for people to now reach out, given from both information flow as well as the kind of diligence that is required. Because of the trust deficit, funders tend to now work more closely with partners with whom they have had a long-term relationship, and so those nonprofits who have been cultivating some of these relationships for years, they have been able to, at least in the last 6 months, survive some of those crises and the pullbacks that they have seen. And the last part is that we see at least this trend of businesses is going to be a long-term trend in terms of families stepping up and giving more. Indian foundations will definitely play a key role in the landscape in future as well. The last part that we need to be clear of is at least the checkbook philanthropist whom we typically, nonprofits rely on for funding, there might be more of a challenge given, there are more restrictions around, the program cost versus, administrative costs, etc. So it is very, very important for nonprofits who work with funders to make sure that you're looking at your real costs and speaking to your donors, explaining why you need this kind of support to make sure that you are not only accounting for the program expenses, but the capacity building that goes in for your institutional expenses. And donors are quite receptive as you share some of these realities to be able to deepen the partnership. So the second part of what we are seeing is specific to the sanitation sector, right? And within the sanitation sector, it is a very small ecosystem. When I said 20 donors, you might think like it's not a big number, but actually 90% of the funding in this ecosystem is shaped by 5 donors, right? And I say sanitation, but it's also related to water. So across these big strategic players, I'll come to a little bit on how they are thinking, but then across the more nascent or more some of the funders who are much more project-based, if I might put it that way, they have a specific set of things that they are actually valuing today, right? So in the first category, which is people whom you would find, typically, especially since Swachh Bharat mission started, there was a lot of interest around, how do you focus on infrastructure, right? And I think that's what I saw in Dhruv's presentation as well. Infrastructure, but not necessarily on the service end of the spectrum. And infrastructure is where a lot of nonprofits as well play, right? Which is whether it is building toilets or building some, some platforms or some community platforms, etc. Which in general are projects that can be packaged into very, very tangible products. You have something countable, very easy to declare. Excuse me. Very, very easy to articulate in terms of outputs in a short-term level. And that has only continued, especially, given that now they are also these are also people whose businesses have gone through their own reduction in expenses and revenues. Now, the second aspect of funders that we see are the strategic funders, right, who have taken a longer term play on sanitation. And when I say strategic funders or the nascent givers, it doesn't categorize them by the source of revenue, but in terms of how they give. And what I mean by that is there are strategic CSRs, there are strategic HNIs, there are strategic foundations, and there are nascent HNIs, there are nascent CSRs, and there are nascent foundations also who are entering this space. The most strategic ones are those whom we see take a very, very focused value chain approach, right? And by that, I mean, when you look at, let's say, a geography, it's not just about, small piecemeal models, but how do you build comprehensive slum sanitation models overall? And those are models that need to be taken beyond. Excuse me for a minute. Yes, I think you will have to get insights from a 5-year-old alongside in this presentation. But in terms of the value chain funders, one thing that they have called for is how do you move fast from pilots to scale? And that's a key question that a lot of people have been asking. That leverage factor is something that has become even more important given the paucity of funds in the sector today. How do you create scale at a speed that this country, which has 1.3 billion citizens, and I saw some of the fact that Rajesh Meena sir was also saying in terms of the ambition that we have set out for SDG 6.2, how are you actually going to achieve this at the speed which we actually owe to the communities to be able to provide these? And COVID showed us, right? 3 months of people not having their monthly wages. You saw how the migration impacted these vulnerable communities. So how do we do this at scale, but at scale and at speed? That's a key question that they are grappling with. We see a lot of convergence that now therefore has started coming in, right? And when I say convergence, I mean, it's Swachh Bharat. How do you now look at it from Jal Jeevan mission perspective? How do you combine it with the National Mission for Clean Ganga, some of the river pollution aspects? How do you look at it from a livelihoods angle? How are you? And those people and nonprofits which are actually in the pivotal area where they are solving for some of these intersectionalities are the ones that some of these larger funders are now focusing on, where they want to see these kind of models which solves for these problems in a much more holistic manner, right? And whether it comes to, it's not just from a infrastructure and service level, but also keeping that community at the center of all of these things. Now, a few things that we saw which mobilized funding very easily, while all of this complex things are happening, a few things that we saw was a focus on frontline sanitation workers. I think we have had a lot of laws around manual scavenging, had a lot of laws, but implementation and follow through has been a problem, especially enforcement has been a problem because the carrot and stick is not very, very clear, right? And so how do you actually enable municipalities provide them with solutions. For instance, I think there was recently a launch on mechanization of sanitation equipment that reduces deaths caused by manual laborers going into some of these sewerage pits and some of these other infrastructure. Right? The second thing is that there's a lot more focus on financing for cities. And some of the bigger players have focused on creating these innovative financing platforms that enable municipalities, especially the small and medium towns, right, tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which do not have as much funding. And I think Antara or maybe one of you also spoke about that, saying, for a small municipality, even 20 lakhs is a huge amount. So how do you create those kind of opportunities where the local organizations, the local businesses, local families can chip in, but then how do you manage those operational expenses and scale them in a sustainable way? That's another area where we saw some of those interests actually spiking. So these are probably the two zones in which I would talk about some of the trends that we have seen. There is overall, I think, we feel positive that as more and more NGOs start speaking about communities, putting their voices in front and center, and some of the videos that you have done are fantastic, Siraz bhai. We need to be amplifying some of these voices even more, so that I think the humanization element of sanitation needs to be as front and center as it has already become. For instance, when you talk health or when you talk about children, it's that much more evident, right? It appeals to the emotions, why funders give. So as and when we are able to, as nonprofits, as communities, being able to bring that aspect front and center, I think we feel positive that we'll be able to make bring more funding capital into the sector. So I'll pause there and repeat the question. Over to you, Siraz.
Thanks, Arvindan, for this fantastic insight. I think it helps us to understand, I think, how and where does the money flows in this sector. Thanks once again. So I think the funding aspect was very important because when we are preparing an action plan, I think resources are required to make sure that those actions are implemented on ground. And the insight that you provided as far as the funding is concerned, and especially looking how donor or funding agencies are looking at these programs and where they want to invest. I think implementing organization and even government can use this information to plan their program accordingly. So thanks once again. I think now it's time for us to take few questions from the audience. I will request participants to type their questions in Q&A box, and please specify whom the question is particularly addressed. We already have few questions and I will start with them. I think let's take a first question which has been addressed to Arvindan. We can start with a question which has been addressed to you regarding funding, and it's from Rachna. It says, it has been generally observed that philanthropic resources are invested in rural area as they are perceived to be the region where needs are higher compared to urban area. Do you see that that perception is changing with the urbanization as more and more people are moving from rural area to urban area? So how this resource allocation is changing or priority is changing, and particularly are the resource allocation sufficient when you talk about tier 2 and tier 3 cities?
There are like two pieces to that question. One is in terms of funding focus on rural versus urban, and then there is the question on which ones are being prioritized, right? I would say today, when one thinks about sanitation, I think a lot of it has been on for a new funder or someone who's new to the space who might not be able to take a long-term approach. It has been focused on toilets. I mean, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but that has been the focus, right? The beginning of the value chain. As we move further, there are different solutions that are needed in urban areas versus in rural areas. Tier 2 and tier 3 cities have a very different kind of setup. Therefore, they need different solutions. Cities which have existing infrastructure versus do not have existing infrastructure. So it's not, I think, funders are asking these questions, saying, how should my giving change if we were to focus on urban versus focusing on funding for rural, right? So there are a lot of questions which aren't answered today because there aren't holistic models, even from a government funding standpoint. While a lot of the current coverage might focus on the tier 1 urbanization, tier 2 and tier 3 urbanization, how do we bring those cities, right? Like right now, you may think 4,000, but if you include some of the tier 2, tier 3 and other towns, it might actually double to 9,000. So, and resources are resources. So you still need to prioritize, right? So the input has to increase if we were to focus. So we do feel like a lot more education is going to be required. And when I say education as a sector, we need to speak with a unified voice on where is the need, how do we see some of these leverage factors, right? Scaling these in a way that we can And government is the biggest opportunity for scale. And how do we work closely with government to make those things happen is the key. And I think those organizations which have demonstrated deep government relationships, which are able to demonstrate how you will be able to, from the beginning, get the buy-in, but then also line up how these things will be sustainable, that is where I think philanthropic funding will probably go.
Thanks. And I have a follow-up question, Arvindan. I think when we talk about water and sanitation sector, there is a lot that goes into the infrastructure, particularly when you are talking about water conservation, reviving the traditional infrastructure, and all those kind of infrastructure investments are very much required at a grassroots level, village level, or at a community level. So in your opinion, how open are the CSR and other philanthropic institutions in terms of investing in the infrastructure? Because we have seen that people are very forthcoming when it comes to capacity building, awareness, and behavioral change, which is very much essential. But this infrastructure is also a required parameter as far as water and sanitation is concerned. So what's your opinion on that part?
So infrastructure actually is much easier. Right now, I think the challenge has been, at least what we have seen, is how does that infrastructure actually lead to impact in the community? That has been hard to explain, right? There have been, a lot of infrastructure that has been built, but is there follow through in terms of training the officials and the people who are operating these infrastructure to actually be able to do this in a particular way? Or what is the follow through system in terms of transportation solutions, in terms of treatment solutions? How are those things taken care of? Otherwise, it will be the example I think I saw in one of those community examples, right? Stuff gets filled up and nobody is actually desludging. So what happens then? So there is definitely a need for us to articulate the model from an impact perspective. And the more you do that, even corporates who have a 1 year horizon, 2 year horizon at most, who operate in communities, want to create goodwill within those communities, right? And families which have businesses in some of these areas want to give back to those communities where they belong. So it's a question of how do we articulate the impact, lead with that impact, and then follow through with what are the activities to get us there, and not actually dissect it in terms of just infrastructure or just services or just capacity building or just community mobilization.
Absolutely. So I think having a storyline for impact is very much essential when you are asking for a money specifically for infrastructure investment. I think. Thank you, Arvindan. That was great. There is a question for राजेश जी. राजेश, एक सवाल है आपके लिए जिसमें पूछा गया है कि सरकार काफी सारा इन्वेस्टमेंट करती है फ्लैगशिप प्रोग्राम में, काफी सारा बड़ा बजट भी एलोकेट किया जाता है और उससे काफी बड़ा इम्पैक्ट भी होता है. जैसे हमने ध्रुव भाई के प्रेजेंटेशन में भी देखा कि पिछले 7-8 साल में जब तक हम सैनिटेशन की बात करते हैं तो हमारा जो परसेंटेज कवरेज वो काफी इंक्रीज हुआ है. लेकिन ये प्रश्न में ये क्वेश्चन में पूछा गया है कि हम आज भी देख रहे हैं कि एक बहुत ही छोटा परसेंटेज ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन है, पर्टिकुलरली पुअर पॉपुलेशन, जिनको ये गवर्नमेंट की स्कीम्स का बेनिफिट नहीं मिल सकता. और उसका कारण ऐसा होता है कि कहीं पे वो एलिजिबिलिटी क्राइटेरिया में फिट नहीं होते. जैसे एक बात अमलनगर सिटी की जो अंतरा बहन ने रखी थी कि भाई टॉयलेट्स की सब्सिडी है लेकिन काफी सारे फैमिलीज के पास टॉयलेट कंस्ट्रक्ट करने की जगह नहीं है. ऐसे काफी सारे दूसरे भी इश्यूज है. तो ये जो मुद्दे हैं जो हम बोलेंगे कि गवर्नमेंट की जो फ्लैगशिप प्रोग्राम है उसके स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर्स में कहीं पे भी फिट नहीं होते, तो उस मुद्दे को सरकार किस तरह से रिजॉल्व करती है या तो करा जाए आगे जाके? क्योंकि अभी जो चैलेंज हम फेस कर रहे हैं, जो लास्ट 5% 10% पॉपुलेशन है उनके साथ ही दिक्कत आ रही है. और जब हम ओडीएफ की बात करते हैं तो अगर 5% को हमने वो सर्विसेज एक्सेस नहीं दिलाई फिर भी सिटी ओडीएफ नहीं हो पाएगा. तो इसको किस तरह से सरकार एड्रेस करना चाहेगी फ्यूचर में?
नहीं, सिराज जी आप सही कह रहे हैं कि स्लम एरियाज में जो पॉपुलेशन रहती है, या तो हमारा जो कम्युनिकेशन गैप है, जो गवर्नमेंट की फ्लैगशिप योजना है उसका जो आईसी एक्टिविटी है उसके तहत उन तक ये योजना पहुंच नहीं पाती है, इसकी जानकारी नहीं मिल पाती है उनको. इसी कारण से मे बी पॉसिबल कि वो इस बेनिफिट से छूट जाते हैं. ऐसा हमारे यहाँ भी हुआ. जयपुर में हमने कई स्लम्स में काम किया और उस स्लम्स में ये हो कि गवर्नमेंट के पास लिमिटेड रिसोर्सेज होते हैं, चाहे वो आप आईसी एक्टिविटी के मान लीजिए. तो जो हमारा रूट लेवल है उसकी इंफॉर्मेशन या तो हम तक नहीं आती है गवर्नमेंट तक, या गवर्नमेंट की जो इंफॉर्मेशन है वो उन तक नहीं पहुंच पाती. तो इसके लिए एक ब्रिज का जो काम करता है वो वहाँ का लोकल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन या लोकल एक्टिव जो कम्युनिटी है वो ही कर पाती है. तो अभी बीच में जैसे जयपुर में हमने बहुत सारे जो IHHL हैं वो ओडीएफ के बाद में भी कुछ एरिया रह गए थे जिनको हमने कम्युनिटी टॉयलेट के तहत कवर किया था, जिसमें एक 2 बस्ती थी, आपने भारत नगर कच्ची बस्ती, जो हमारा काफी जयपुर का आउटर एरिया है, जो वेस्टर्न पार्ट है, उसमें हिली टेरन पे थी। तो उसमें हमने ये वहां के लोगों के पास में कम्युनिटी टॉयलेट तो हमने बना दिया, लेकिन उनके पास जगह थी, they are interested in individual household toilets. Then we get the form through your organization and submit the form to portal, and they construct a toilet and they are using. तो यही एक कारण रहता है कि जिसकी वजह से वहां तक ये अप्रोच नहीं हो पाती है।
थैंक यू राजीव। अगला सवाल है, आई थिंक नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज एड्रेस्ड टू ध्रुव। आई थिंक ध्रुव यू ऑलरेडी answered it partially in the chat box, but I will just like to seek more clarity. So to what extent this performance assessment system is being used by state and district administration? So in your presentation you said that you are covering 6 states, right? So is it presently used by 6 states, or you are supporting six states and using it?
So basically we have started with Gujarat and Maharashtra, and then in 2012, we have been a technical partner to the Ministry of Urban Development at that time. And we conducted regional training across all the states. And then they have sent a letter to all the states to adopt the PAS system. And it is up to the states to adopt the system. So post that, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Jharkhand has adopted the PAS system. So later on, we have been supporting to 6 states, and then Assam, we were able to do it for 1 year only. So then we have been supporting for more than 5 years for 5 states only. So in terms of the usage by the respective state government and the district official at a various level, including the urban local government. So this system, it is more like everyone knows about the government, the filing system. When we have started, there is no filing system about the tracking the performance of the water supply and sanitation. And when we have started working with the respective state government and the city government, the entire institutionalization and data has been recorded in a proper format. It is available into the downloaded format. It can be easily viewed from a city profile and compare with the states. So there are lots of interest has been started emerging that because the state government, whenever they are taking a reviews, they are always referring, benchmarking those information what the cities have reported. And this has been used for later on for a regular progress review during their day-to-day operations. Specifically, their major interest about the ongoing projects, whether whatever the investment has been made, it is actually translated on ground or not. So that is the major interest of the respective state government. But also this has been linked with the publication of service level benchmark and the target setting for a next year as a part of the 13th and the 14th Finance Commission. As a performance grant is also, substantial performance grant has been linked to the publishing and tracking the service levels. So that also the financial incentive which led to this state government to use of the system. So in terms of the challenges, difficulties, we didn't see the challenges and difficulties in terms of the adoption of the system. But yes, every year the people are transferring, so we have to do it regular capacity building workshop for train of the what is the system means, what are the data validation checks, what sort of things to be keep in mind, how to strengthen the data record keeping. Because one of the poor thing is if we see the information, many information which are coming from the guesstimates bed is because there is no metering into the water distribution system. So that on that aspect, we need to do a lots of training and capacity building and head loading support to the city government. So that is our broad experience of using the data.
Thank you, Dhruv bhai. And we are running out of time, so there is a last question that I will like to take, and it's addressed to Antra. Antra, it's a very interesting question and definitely useful answer because it's very unique to the MST experience. So question is, your organization works very closely with poor women. in your experience, why it is essential to engage women in planning and delivering of water and sanitation services?
Saraswai, I think that women are the most affected ones when it comes to the lack of basic services, and the burden of household in absence of water and sanitation services falls on women, whether it is fetching of water or carrying of water from far away. And when they are defecating in open, they have to face all the assault and harassment over there. So I think their participation can give the appropriate and the best sustainable solutions, because they are the ones who are facing all these issues on this spots and absence of water and services.
Bang on. Thanks, Antara. I think that's really something that needs to be kept in mind when we are planning for water and sanitation. So I will have to end the Q&A session here. I was not able to take all the questions, but we will try that all the relevant questions are answered through email, or maybe we can upload it on our website. I will like to conclude this discussion by key takeaways that I have noted down. I think the key takeaways for me are: issue of equity has to be addressed during the planning phase to ensure that most vulnerable are not left behind, because they require these services the most. Second is water conservation is going to be a big issue in coming years, and it is essential that we address this issue by developing local and sustainable solutions. One of it was very well demonstrated by an Amalner example as far as water conservation is concerned. Also, another takeaway is we need to encourage the use of tools like performance assessment system to ensure the equitable delivery of the essential services. Because when huge resources are allocated, it is extremely important that we measure the impact, and such kind of measurement system help us to understand where are the gaps, and identifying those gaps helps us to plan what is the next phase of our project. So I think the tools like performance assessment system plays extremely important role, not only for the administration, but also for the funding agencies who are forthcoming in investment in water and sanitation and essential services. And finally, I think resources needs to be mobilized, particularly in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, so that the development can keep pace with the rapid urbanization. We are seeing that more and more people are actually moving in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And hence it needs to be ensured that resources are also mobilized to match with this demand. So those are the 3-4 key takeaways that I have from this webinar. And that's all for today's webinar. And as mentioned earlier, MST is organizing a series of webinars. And our second webinar is on the issue of affordable housing and housing finance, which is scheduled on 3rd Feb at the same time. So those who are interested can register using the registration link, which will be shared in the chat box. With this, I will like to conclude this webinar. I hope all you enjoyed today's discussion. I will once again take this opportunity to thank all our panelists for taking out the time to interact with us. I will also like to thank all the participants for joining us today on this webinar. And we hope to see you again in the forthcoming webinar. Thank you, good evening, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siraj.
Thank you, Siraj.
Thank you, Siraj, and best wishes for next webinar series.
Thank you.